As a reminder, it's been suggested that every character, every archetype, and every symbol in every story represents an aspect of our self, and therefore that every story is our story. But it's also suggested that we don't listen to stories, because behind our ears, in fact, all of our senses, lies the residue of our biases, our prejudices, and our judgments. So live the story, live the stories. Let's see what this one evokes in us. It's a story about a king who had a beloved daughter who had a fatal illness. He called physicians and soothsayers and magicians from all over to try to find a cure, but to no avail. So there was a pall of darkness, sadness and doom in the palace. But then one of the learned physicians had a thought, and he said, "Sire, it is said that if anyone eats fruit from the tree of life, all illnesses, all burdens will be taken away." Immediately the king was brightened up. Where is this tree? Where can it be found? And this learned physician said, "It is heard that it is said in the holy book that this tree is to be found in the Garden of Eden." Where is this? Said the, who knows this place? The physician said, "Well, it is said that those who call themselves the Jewish people know of this book and know of this place." So immediately the king demanded that the leader of the Jewish people be brought before him. When the rabbi who headed the Jewish people in that community was brought before the king demanded, "Do you know where the tree of life is located?" And of course the rabbi, knowing the great book, said, "Yes, it is said that it is located in the Garden of Eden." The king said, "Well, I demand that you bring a fruit from this tree here within 3 days, otherwise I will banish and punish all of your people." So the rabbi went away, and of course he was very, very downhearted. Who could possibly find their way to the Garden of Eden and find this fruit that would save the sire's daughter's life? So when he went back to his home and he was pacing up and down, his daughter came to him and said, "Father, what is it that's troubling you?" And of course the rabbi told the story of the demand that had been placed on him and his people. And he bewailed, who knows, who can find themselves, find their way to the Garden of Eden and the tree that bears the fruit of life. But then his daughter said, "You know, Father, that it is said that in our forest there is an old hermit, an old man who is said to be one of the hidden pillars of life. Perhaps if we find our way to him, he will be able to help us. Oh, yes, said the old rabbi. Indeed, I have heard that one such as this does abide in our forest. So immediately he and his daughter set out to find their way to the place in which this hidden tzaddik, saint, lived. And indeed, somehow, they made their way and found themselves at the doorway of his abode. When they knocked on the door, and he answered, of course, being as he is, he recognized immediately what they were about and invited them in. And after the greetings necessary in all such circumstances, he took down from the shelf a book, and he opened up that book in which there was located a leaf. He said to the rabbi and his daughter, "This leaf has been placed in this book for many, many years. But in looking at the leaf, it was as fresh as though it had just been plucked from the tree." So he handed the leaf to the daughter, and he said, "It is said that this is a leaf from the tree of life in the Garden of Eden. Take it, place it under your pillow, and see what happens." Now the rabbi and his daughter were greatly surprised that in this time and in this place, that it was the daughter who had been handed the leaf, but obeying exactly what the hidden tzaddik said, he advised her to take the leaf, place it under your pillow. And as they had a long way to go back to where they came from, they stayed at an inn nearby overnight, and sleeping as she was told to do, she placed the leaf under her pillow, and in that night she dreamt a dream. She dreamt that she was in a magnificent garden, trees bearing fruit and flowers all around, and she noticed that in every tree there was an angel. So she asked, "Please, will you guide me to the tree of life?" The angel said, "Yes, I can show you, but you will see that there are 2 trees, and you must choose for yourself which one is the tree of life." The angel guided her to the place where the 2 great trees stood. They were identical. She immediately recognized that one was the tree of life and the other was the tree of knowledge. But which one was the tree of life? But then, as she looked, she saw that in one of the trees there was a snake, and she immediately knew that this was the tree of knowledge that was spoken of in the holy books. So without hesitation, she went to the other tree and plucked one of the glistening fruit that was there. In the morning, when she awoke, to her very great surprise, there was the fruit lying on her pillow. She called her father, the rabbi, and they rejoiced. But they must hasten, because this was the third day. And so they did. When they went back to the palace, of course, they told the king, who was immediately elated, take it to the princess now. So they took the fruit. They placed it under her nose, and immediately her eyes opened. They invited her to eat of the fruit, and she did, and immediately became well and whole once again. We know the end of this story. Or do we know the end of this story? Can the end of the story only be when we've ingested life in the way of our life's experiences, other people's stories, when we've ingested them, digested them? Inevitably and always, when we end a story, there is a realization that arises from it. Before, it might have been a teaching, something that we've had to learn. But now, in the way of stories, when we complete the experiences, the stories of life, our story, everyone else's story, what is the realization that's coming for us? Behind a place of maybe a residue of biases and programming and conditioning, beliefs. So how would you end this story? What is the awareness that arises from us after this allegory? If we can end this story with a realization, we can end every story with a realization, because we rest in a place, where all stories begin and end. To claim this place, to claim this place. We have to find the place where stories end.